like to welcome Admiral Ibrahim, retired, Air Chief Marshal Pentirin. I'd like to also welcome General Olonisha King, General Elio Irabo, Lieutenant General Ihejika, former Kwas, Lieutenant General Farouk Yahaya, Vice Admiral A.Z. Gambo, Air Chief Marshal O.O. Petinri, former Chief of Defense Staff, Air Marshal I.O. Amao, former Chief of the Air Staff. We welcome you all sincerely and we thank you for being here to join the crop of people whom you showed the way and who now are doing such great work like the current Chief of Defense Staff. We thank you most sincerely for being here. This is the moment when we begin to invite the regional bodies to assist us in talking through how regional bodies are important, are critical, are useful for talking about security across borders and ensuring that every nation joined together at the hip is safe and secure. Help me at this time to please welcome Dr. Umar Aliu Toure, President of the ECOWAS Commission, as he delivers his own intervention.
MC, I just want to make a slight correction. The President of the ECOWAS Commission, His Excellency Umar Aliu Toure, is unavoidably absent, and in his place, I, Ambassador Abdel Fattah Musa, the Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security of the ECOWAS Commission, will be reading his paper on his behalf. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the President of the ECOWAS Commission, His Excellency Dr. Umar Aliu Toure, I wish to welcome our distinguished guests and participants to the inaugural African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit. It is my honor to acknowledge the presence, here, first and foremost of His Excellency Kashim Shettima, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably representing His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President and Chief, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Her Excellency Amina Mohammed. I would also, like to recognize the presence of Mohammed Badaro Abu Bakar, ably represented by the Minister of State, and then other honorable members of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, leadership of the Senate, House of Representatives. Here with us also, I want to, recognize the tireless efforts also of the Chief of Defense of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, General Christopher Musa, and his peers from across the African continent, and all the chiefs of our defense and intelligence services across the continent here present. There are a number of dignitaries from West Africa also here present, and I crave your indulgence just to recognize a few of them. And I'm being a bit selfish because these are the former leadership of the ECOWAS Commission. First, His Excellency Lansana Kouyaté, former Executive Secretary of ECOWAS Commission, and His Excellency Mohamed Ibn Chambers, the first President of the ECOWAS Commission, here present. And our number one partner within the international community, His Excellency Leonardo Simao, the Special Representative of the Secretary General for West Africa and head of UNOWAS, Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps. This inaugural summit of the African Chiefs of Defense Staff under the theme, Combating Contemporary Threats to Regional Peace and Security in Africa, the role of strategic defense collaboration, is a logical sequel to Nigerian-led continental initiative born out of the vision and determination of His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to empower the peace and security intelligence establishments in this country to regionalize their initiatives to benefit the entire continent. This bold foresight has materialized in, among other endeavors, the ongoing transformation of the National Counterterrorism Center in Nigeria into an African non-kinetic counterterrorism center. The efforts to establish the Combined Maritime Task Force for the Gulf of Guinea, which will secure the combined exclusive maritime economic zone to spur the operationalization of the African Continental Free Trade Area, including by securing the maritime trade corridors linking West and Central Africa to the Americas, Asia, and Europe. The Joint Doctrine and Warfare Center, recently inaugurated in Abuja, is a microcosm of the key objectives of this summit. That is, ensuring intelligence sharing, coordinated and interoperable approaches to responses to the myriad insecurity facing the continent. ECOWAS is therefore incredibly delighted and welcomes this groundbreaking summit that will, among other objectives, be discussing border management and regional security, leveraging artificial intelligence for regional security, as well as the cardinal importance of regional cooperation in responding to threats posed by terrorism and violent extremism, banditry, transnational organized crime on land, at sea, and in the skies. And most importantly, the objective to integrate the continent's burgeoning private sector into the security discourse. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, no region in Africa is spared the scourge of terrorism, civil and predatory wars, organized crime, and underdevelopment. The conflict in Eastern DRC impacts the entire Great Lakes region and beyond. The crisis in Central Africa directly impacts West Africa. And the unresolved crisis in Libya and Sudan generate and allow an inflow of terrorists into the Sahel and beyond. The various crises may be local, but they require a coordinated continental response, with the African Union serving as the glue and the ultimate coordinating hub for these endeavors. There is no gainsaying that West Africa, in particular the Sahel sub-region, has emerged as the epicenter of global terrorism, with several analytical surveys indicating that the Sahel accounted for 51% of global terrorism deaths in 2024 alone. In disparate efforts to counter terrorism in the region, some ethnic groups have been collectively and unjustifiably demonized, associating them with terrorist franchises and thus igniting civil wars alongside the fight against terrorism. In the same vein, local communities in the periphery, women and children in particular, have borne the brunt of state retreat and the coercive protection of jihadist forces. In between, the war economy is thriving from illegal mining, forced protection, and illegal taxation. the preponderance of young people under 25 in the continent, instead of being the agents of demographic dividend, are turning into a curse due to state failings and the allure of quick financial dividends being offered by the operators of the war economy. Underlying this phenomena is the explosion of technology, sophisticated autonomous weapon systems, and the pervasive influence of social media. Against this backdrop, ECOWAS continues to manage and repair the fallout between the community and the alliance of the Sahel states, which are decided to withdraw from the ECOWAS community, alongside intensive diplomatic overtures and aimed at reuniting the region. The ECOWAS heads of state and government have taken the strategic decision in the spirit of regional solidarity to safeguard the interests of all community citizens by allowing citizens of the AES to continue to enjoy all the benefits of regional integration project launched some 50 years ago today, including the free movement of persons and the right of abode and the freedom to do trade across the entire region. The Republic of Benin is not free from the terrorist incursion so long as terrorism festers in its northern neighbors. The same can be said of all the other littoral states bordering the Sahel, thanks to porous borders, weak border security, and cross-border ethnic and trade relations knitted together over the centuries. With the interlocking and mutually destructive nature of terrorism and organized crime for the entire region, ECOWAS continues to encourage collaboration on security matters with our brothers and sisters of the Alliance of the Sahelian States, despite probably lingering political differences. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ECOWAS is acutely aware of the threat of renewed geostrategic and geopolitical processes unfolding in West Africa and beyond that threaten renewed proxy wars akin to the Cold War era, due in part to the acute insecurity facing the continent, and it is determined to avert this scenario. A first step in this direction is our efforts to scale up counter-terrorism efforts. On the directive of the ECOWAS heads of state and government, the organization is in the process of activating a 260,000 rapid deployment counter-terrorism brigade and to provide logistic and financial support to frontline states facing terrorism. While ECOWAS remains firmly committed to raising its 5,000-man brigade under the auspices of the African Peace and Security Architecture, and more particularly the Continental Standby Force, the activation of this rapid deployment force has become a necessity given the asymmetric security dynamics in the region. We are conscious of the fact that this bold initiative requires the necessary financial resources and capabilities to make it a reality. To this end, ECOWAS will be hosting a meeting of the Ministers of Finance and Defense to agree on the concrete funding modalities to raise an annual budget of 2.5 billion toward the activation of the regional counter-terrorism force. The meeting of these ministers is taking place this Friday, this coming Friday in Abuja. By this initiative, ECOWAS is also throwing the gauntlet to bilateral and multilateral partners to complement this daring regional initiative. In particular, we hope that this summit will, through the African Union, send a clarion call to the United Nations to to redeem the pledge made under United Nations Security Council Resolution 2719 of December 2023 to fund 75% of African-led peace support operations. Besides the counter-terrorism effort, ECOWAS is also pursuing the operationalization of its integrated maritime security with the establishment of 3 integrated maritime centers across the region and an international maritime coordinating center in Abidjan, as well as in its strategy on countering transnational organized crime, among others. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, while expressing ECOWAS's deep appreciation to the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Chief of Defense Staff for this groundbreaking and promising initiative, we encourage participants at this summit to crown deliberations with concrete, practical, and innovative recommendations on mechanisms for effective intracontinental collaboration to respond to the hybrid security challenges, the myriad security challenges facing Africa, and to advance our aspirations for the Africa that we want. Many thanks for your attention and wishing all of us fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. ECOWAS is committed and is pretty excited by this maiden summit of African Chiefs of Defense Staff taking place in Abuja. The importance of information sharing across borders, the challenge of community conflicts, the demonization of ethnic groups described as terrorists that has led to a lot of community clashes and civil wars, the negative impact of social media, and the very powerful importance of technology. We're so grateful to Dr. Omar Aliu Toure, who has delivered that intervention to keep us on track at this summit today. And as we continue with regional bodies, we thank you so very much, sir, for your intervention. And it's time now to invite His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf to make his way. Is AU Commission here? Right. While we're waiting to make a clarification of the AU Commission's position in delivering their intervention, I'd like to make welcome Mr. Mohammed Fall, UN Resident Coordinator, Nigeria. Mr. Fall, with whom I'm most familiar. Where is he? There he is. It's good to see you. Welcome and thank you for coming. Your Excellency, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we now go to goodwill messages, and I'd like to please crave your indulgence as His Excellency, our very, very special guest of honor, has multiple events to attend to and several papers on his desk. He represents Mr. President here, and we must keep our time in check. So I'd like to please appeal that we stay within our 5 minutes window as we enter the goodwill message at this point. If it's shorter, it will be nicer. If it is 5 minutes, it will be just on time. We're so grateful for the opportunity to hear your insights and your mind on the matter of security in this summit, whose theme is combating contemporary threats to regional peace and security, the role of strategic defense collaboration. Please help me make welcome His Excellency Lansana Kouyaté, former Prime Minister, Republic of Guinea. Please continue to clap. It's a long walk. I'd like to advise that all speakers should please use this podium. This is the podium for all speakers. Your Excellency, sir, if you would approach me, your podium is this way. This way. Thank you, sir.
I would like, first of all, to say, Madam, that there is a proverb which says that a speech does not need to be eternal for being immortal. I will be very short. Monsieur Général Christopher Moussa, qui nous a fait l'honneur de nous inviter ici, et j'étais là il y a quelques jours, et Monsieur le vice-président de la République fédérale du Nigeria, qui représente le commandant en chef des forces armées du Nigeria, le président Ahmed Bola Tinubu, et Madame la vice-secrétaire générale des Nations Unies, je voudrais dire juste que les chefs d'état-major nous donnent l'occasion de nous pencher sur le thème « Combattre les menaces actuelles à la paix régionale et à la sécurité en Afrique. Le rôle de la stratégie de défense collaborative. » Un sujet apparemment simple, mais je vais évoquer peut-être en un temps court ce qui psychologiquement marque l'Afrique. Il y a 54 pays membres de ce continent qui sont là, petits ou grands, moyens ou pas, dans chacune des régions, du nord au sud, de l'est au centre et du centre à l'ouest, il y a des guerres. N'ayons pas peur des mots. La lutte contre le terrorisme a été évoquée et je crois que je n'ai pas à revenir là-dessus. Mais tout ce monde est là et je crois que c'est la première fois que les chefs d'état-major de tout le continent se réunissent. Ça veut dire qu'il y a un sujet important. L'importance de ce sujet, c'est de combattre partout où il y a des guerres, quelle que soit la puissance de nos pays, aller de l'avant, lancer des projets, être soutenu. Tout cela n'est que précaire tant que la paix ne revient pas là où elle doit venir. Il y a la psychologie. L'Afrique n'est pas perçue comme un continent. L'Afrique est perçue comme un pays. Je le dis pour cause. Allons en Asie, en Europe ou aux États-Unis, demandons à un voyageur de là-bas qui doit venir dans un quelconque pays parmi les 54, où vas-tu demain? Il va dire d'abord en Afrique. Il faut lui demander doublement où en Afrique. Il dira le pays. Même nous autres, Africains, quand nous sommes dehors, on veut voyager, parfois on dit je vais en Afrique. L'Afrique est perçue comme un pays. Cela vient d'où? De notre histoire ancestrale. 12e, 13e siècle où nos empires ont eu, n'est-ce pas, un moment fabuleux, où du nord au sud, de l'est à l'ouest, jusqu'au centre, les empires sont nés et ont montré l'union des forces, malgré les combats qui se sont passés parfois entre nous. Mais la colonisation n'a épargné aucun pays africain. Parmi les 5 pays qui n'ont jamais été colonisés par l'Europe, qu'il s'agisse du Japon, des 2 Corées ou de la Thaïlande, il n'y a que le Nigeria qui figure en Afrique. Mesdames, Messieurs, j'aurai à intervenir lorsque les panels vont commencer, je crois que c'est mercredi. il y aura des choses à dire et à proposer. Quelles que soient nos convictions, s'il n'y a pas de paix, il n'y a pas de développement. La paix est le soubassement du développement. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle je suis heureux de voir tous ces hommes, ces femmes peut-être de l'armée qui ont fait le déplacement pour voir le sujet. Le sujet dont je vais traiter mercredi, ce sera le financement à travers le partenariat public-privé, le financement, n'est-ce pas, des armées. C'est un sujet délicat, un sujet simple, on peut le faire, et mercredi, je vous en dirai plus. Je ne veux pas faire entorse à ce que j'avais dit au début. Je vous remercie et bonne chance à cette conférence.
Je te remercie, monsieur. We're very pleased that we have a man who has served ECOWAS as the Executive Secretary, who is also the former Prime Minister, Republic of Guinea, His Excellency Lansana Kouyaté, who has delivered his intervention in French. And as we all know, part of what he said has to do with the public-private sector collaboration to enhance security within the African sub-region. The security issues in Africa are a bit complicated, but they are not insurmountable. And so would like to again give a warm round of applause to His Excellency Lansana Kouyaté. Thank you very much, sir. I see our long-standing friend, His Excellency Mohammed Ibn Chambers. We thank you for being here, so it's good to see you always. Welcome. I'd like, at this point, to invite my teacher and mentor, a man who has served the world at different fora, who was also in the United Nations, as former Minister of External Affairs and former permanent representative of Nigeria to the United Nations, and only recently a man who served as Chief of Staff to the former President, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari. Teacher, mentor, Democrat, diplomat par excellence. Help me welcome Professor Ibrahim Agboola Gambari. Your Excellency, sir.
The President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, ably represented by His Excellency the Vice President, Senator Shettima Kashim, GCON, members of the National Assembly, members of the Federal Executive Council here present, the Deputy Secretary General of the UN, our very own Amina Mohammed, GCON, Chief of Defense Staff, General Musa C. OFR, the Chiefs of Defense Staff of the African countries here present, service chiefs and heads of security agencies, dear friends, former colleagues, Lansana Kouyaté, Mohammed Ibn Chamba, SRC, Leonardo Shimao, distinguished resource persons and participant members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to be part of this very timely, very special, and indeed historic event of the coming together of the African Defense Chiefs here in Abuja, Nigeria. For those of us who have lived through pre- and post-independence of African nations, this event conjures emotion as well as nostalgia. In this regard, we recall vividly how in the late 50s, the late President Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana articulated his vision of an African collective security system through the creation of an African High Command. African High Command is the highest form of strategic defense cooperation in the continent, were it to have been established. Nkrumah's vision was further developed here in Nigeria, us in the continent. This is largely due to the fact that we have to first secure our respective countries before we can then, in the concentric circles of defense policy, secure our respective regions as we strive to secure our continent. It's therefore very symbolic that Nigeria is hosting this conference of African defense chiefs today, the very first of its kind in 2025, some 61 years on. May I therefore congratulate Mr. President, His Excellency, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, for facilitating this crucial African summit. Indeed, securing Nigeria has made it possible for the country to be at the forefront of securing West Africa. We're all aware of the creation of ECOWAS and its defense instrument ECOMOG. Joined by Ghana and other member states of ECOWAS, ECOMOG was a trailblazer in the security and defense of the sub-region of West Africa. The mentality of ECOMOG, the Nigerian Armed Forces have made tremendous impact on the region and continue to do so. I therefore salute our chief hosts of this event, General Christopher Musa, and all the service chiefs for their focus and dedication to the peace and security of the most populous sub-region in Africa, and for their foresight in convening this inaugural African Chiefs of Defense Summit. The theme of the summit, combating contemporary threats to regional peace and security in Africa, the role of strategic defense collaboration, resonates strongly alike. Neither has there been lack of practical steps to combat insecurity in Africa through collective approach. The African Peace and Security Architecture and a supportive standby force have been created under the auspices of the African Union, and that African standby force was actually supposed to have become operational by 2015. The African Union Agenda 2063 emphasized silencing the guns by the year 2020, which has passed, and now shifted to 2030. Still, the guns are still blazing, as Sudan, South Sudan, the Sahel, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Southern Africa continue to witness violent conflict. According to some research work done by the African Research Network for Regional and Global Governance, Innovation, with headquarters in Savannah Center for Diplomacy, Democracy and Development here in Abuja, there are now over 1,000 insurgency groups in Africa, and the number keeps rising. And the majority of our Regional Economic Commission are actually dealing with banditry and terrorism and other forms of insurgency. So regional economic communities, was supposed to be primarily about economic integration, has to, of course, devote a lot of its attention to issues of dealing with banditry, terrorism, and insurgency. Let me conclude by expressing the strongest conviction that Africa's collective security can only be enhanced with active, practical, and proactive collaboration at the regional and continental levels. There must be synergy in military cooperation, promotion of common training, promotion of common doctrinal concepts, sharing of intelligence, the interoperability of armaments, but also capacity building, particularly in airlifting, all of which are essential for operationalization of the African standby force. We must also upgrade and strengthen our defense industries and own our technologies in order to avoid control from external forces. Finally, this summit, this historic summit, the very first of its kind, of African defense chiefs, should not yet be another talk shop. We must strive at concrete and realistic solutions to combat old as well as new threats to peace and security in Africa. Africa must design, own, and build a security architecture that guarantees our sovereignties and guarantees human security in all of its dimensions. Thank you for your kind attention, and I wish all of us fruitful deliberation. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Professor Ibrahim Gambari, erudite as ever, discussing the security issues within the African subcontinent, talking about synergy, talking about capacity building, and all the ingredients that is needed to secure Africa. And it starts by saying that we must secure our respective countries, and then subsequently we begin to secure our respective regions. You do not know where you are going, except you know where you are coming from. Very timely, very proactive, very symbolic is this summit. Another round of applause, please, for Professor Ibrahim Gambari. Your Excellencies, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me to welcome Major General Emmanuel Odiondaye, Chief of Defense Intelligence, who is with us today. As we progress, I did think I saw amongst the senators the very distinguished Senator Adams Oshiomhole, who is seated amongst us this afternoon. It's good to see you. Welcome. Let us quickly run through this program now and ensure that we understand that our goodwill is still in situ. Our timing is still 5 minutes, and I'd like at this point to quickly welcome Engineer. As we progress, I did think I saw amongst the senators the very distinguished Senator Adams Oshiomhole, who is seated amongst us this afternoon. It's good to see you. Welcome. Let us quickly run through.
Your Excellency, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, ably represented by Senator Kashim, His Excellency DCON, distinguished senators present, ministers present, our chief host, General Musa, President of the ECOWAS, President of the African Union, distinguished service chiefs from across the continent, captains of industry, ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to stand on the protocols as established. It is my great pleasure to be part of this auspicious gathering of the 2025 African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit. This year's theme couldn't be timelier. Contemporary threats to peace and security directly affect not only the stability of our nations, but also the sustainability of vital resources, which remain the backbone of our economic growth. Therefore, this gathering is a strategic avenue to strengthen military chiefs of defense staff, support and collaboration across the continent, and to develop strategic security architecture that are fit for purpose and in line with our continental aspirations for growth, development, and security of lives and property. Security forms a key pillar of the energy business and therefore plays a very important and strategic role in achieving our national, regional, continental energy security goal. I'm speaking as the head of the largest national oil company on the continent, the NNPC Limited. We have seen the benefits of the collaboration within the security space with significant improvements in our operating environment. The dilapidating impact of crude theft, low pipeline availability, and attacks are issues that have becoming stories of the past for us. And this has come from the immense and intentional efforts of our government security and intelligence agencies across the nation, and in particular within the Niger Delta. Today, I can proudly report to you all that our pipelines and terminal receipts of crude oil that was somewhere as low as 20-30% some periods back, we are attaining close to 100% due to the support of the security forces and intelligence agencies. Again, this achievement would not have been possible without the professionalism, the discipline, the collaborative spirit of our defense and security institutions. We at NNPC Limited hold this partnership in the highest regard. We also know that crude theft and its attendant illegal activities are by no means a purely localized occurrence. Rather, these operations involve sophisticated international syndicates that take advantage of gaps within the states, national, regional, and continental security architecture to conduct their illicit activities. It is therefore imperative that forums such as these are encouraged with a view to strengthen strategic, tactical, and operational activities within the continent. Africa must take its destiny into its hands and chart a collective way forward that meets the goals and aspirations of our people. As stakeholders within the energy industry, and in light of growing geopolitical tension around the world, NNPC Limited wishes to restate our commitment to supporting the effort of the various security agencies and intelligence agencies, and willingness to collaborate and cooperate with the military and intelligence agencies. This support and collaboration have been demonstrated, as mentioned earlier, with our successes in industry-wide security architecture here in Nigeria, which has greatly reduced the incidence of sabotage, vandalism, crude theft, illegal refineries, illegal bunkering, and piracy. We envision, by virtue of this gathering and the initiatives to be developed, an expanded architecture that takes into account the activities on a regional and continental level, with all the enabling tools, policies, and technologies to allow seamless synergies and collaboration across borders. So, as this summit deliberates in deepening strategic defense collaboration across Africa, let me assure you that the oil and gas sector in Nigeria stands ready to complement this effort, as we eagerly articulate the benefits to be accrued for the ultimate upliftment of all the stakeholders as citizenry across our borders. Together, we can safeguard Africa's resources, ladies and gentlemen. We can reinforce the peace and create an enabling environment for prosperity of our people. Do accept assurance of our highest regard on behalf of NNPC Limited and the Nigerian industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We thank you most sincerely for that intervention and that commitment that the NNPC Limited is ready not only to collaborate, but is ready to stand behind all military, armed forces, and intelligence agencies to prevent illicit bunkering and the illicit activities around the oil industry in Nigeria. And he has said to us that they are not localized occurrences. They're so highly sophisticated that you can see the hand of international and regional support in providing this disruption of the oil industry in Nigeria. We thank you for your intervention. I'm sure the Chief of Defense Staff and all the security apparatchik are grateful for the NNPC Limited support. We thank you so very much. Another round of applause for a man who supports the security agencies in Nigeria to ensure that their work is going on really well. Your Excellency, a special guest of honor, representative of His Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the person of His Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Everybody knows that within Nigerian universities, there's healthy competition. I'm a graduate of the Ahmadu Bello University Zaria. And then I married a man who went to the University of Ibadan. And so the various infighting concerning ABU Zaria and University of Ibadan is epic in my residence. But we also know that our special guest of honor being represented today, His Excellency the Vice President went to do his master's at the University of Ibadan. And so University of Ibadan is constantly having this, Jojo with ABU Zaria. But like I always say, all my children went to ABU Zaria, so I'm not going to talk about who won this competition. We'll leave it there. Having said that, it is now my pleasure to quickly invite to the podium the Vice President of Nigeria's premier university, the University of Ibadan, Professor Kayode Adebowale, to come and give his intervention. Vice Chancellor, sir. As he makes his way, he's wearing a knowing smile, saying, well, this ABU lady has introduced the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ibadan. We'll have the conversation at lunch. Welcome. The microphone is live. Thank you, sir.
The President and Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, who is ably represented by Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and a great alumnus of the premier university, the University of Ibadan. The distinguished defense chiefs of staff of the African continent, Nigerian Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Gwabin Musa, OFR, honorable ministers, esteemed military officers, members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me to gingerly lean on the protocol that have been established by the only director of ceremony that I know, Regina Abu. On behalf of Senate, on behalf of Council and the entire community of the Premier University, University of Ibadan, I extend our warmest felicitations and most sincere goodwill to the organizers and participants of this landmark inaugural African Defense Chiefs of Staff Summit. The convening of this summit under the timely theme, Combating Contemporary Threats to Regional Peace and Security in Africa, the role of strategic defense collaboration is not only commendable, but very essential. It represents a profound and collective commitment to confronting the complex security challenges that test the resilience of our beloved continent, from violent extremism to transnational terrorism, to cyber threats, maritime insecurity, and destabilizing impact of climate change. While the mandate of our armed forces is to provide a robust security architecture that is necessary for any nation to thrive, the role of the academy is to provide the intellectual foundation upon which lasting peace and sustainable development are built. The University of Ibadan, as a leading center for scholarly inquiry, recognizes that these contemporary threats are multifaceted. They cannot be defeated by forces of arms alone. They require force of intellect, deep analysis, evidence-based nuanced understanding of lives. Through our institutes, such as the Institute for Peace and Strategic Studies, the TED Fund Center of Excellence in Security Management, and departments across our universities, we are dedicated to researching these very issues. We are committed to training the next generation of strategic thinkers, policy analysts, and leaders who will populate the defense and security sectors, equipping them just with the technical knowledge, but also with deep commitment to African solutions for African problems. Therefore, we view this summit not merely as a military gathering, but as a vital strategic think tank. We urge you to see the academia as a natural and indispensable partner in this endeavor. We offer our research capabilities, our analytical resources, and our neutral grounds for dialogue and simulation to support the vital work that you do. We are confident that the collaborations that is forged and the strategies that will be articulated in this hall over the coming days will significantly advance the cause of peace and security across Africa. Your work ensures the stability that allows our institution to flourish, and in turn, we pledge to provide the knowledge and innovation that can make your mission more effective and more enduring. The journey towards a peaceful and secure Africa is arduous, but it is not insurmountable, as has been said earlier. This inaugural summit, under the bold leadership of the Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, marks a significant stride forward. By prioritizing strategic defense collaboration, you are acknowledging that our collective security is indivisible. The threats we face demand a unified African response that is characterized by shared purpose, integrated action, and particularly mutual trust. Let this summit be a catalyst for concrete, actionable framework. Let it forge bonds of cooperation stronger than the forces seeking to divide us. Let us harness the collective might, the collective wisdom and innovations of African defense establishments for the singular goal of securing our people and unlocking our continent's boundless potential. The University of Ibadan commends your commitment and stands ready to partner with you in this noble cause. We sincerely wish you a fruitful deliberation over the coming days. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. The University of Ibadan has made its intervention. We thank the director who brought the message, and we are appreciative of the fact that he says that universities provide intellectual foundation for lasting peace by writing about it, discussing it, and taking it to the point of the ivory towers. We get to hear how much talking about it, researching it, can provide us solutions. Please, let's give a round of applause to the University of Ibadan for their intervention. Thank you very much indeed. We're very pleased that the academia is making its way into this conversation, which is critical. And we know, of course, that the security agencies also have ivory towers where they also discuss these issues and JoJo and research. We thank you most sincerely. I'd like to please remind you of the exhibition. Your Excellencies, as you make your way out the door, there are quite a number of organizations that have exhibited for this Africa Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit 2025, and the exhibitions are quite exciting. I went through them yesterday and this morning, and I'd like to invite you to please ensure that you have the opportunity of taking a look at what is available. Your Excellency, our special guest of honor, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for me to invite the Chief of International Programs and Strategy at the Invictus Games Foundation, Mr. David Wiseman, to give highlights on the Invictus Games. Mr. Wiseman, please encourage him. It's live, yes.
Thank you. Before I start for proper, I'm going to issue my first of two promises. I have 10 minutes on the agenda, Madam, 10 minutes. But in return for your attention, and in the interest of brevity, which all good soldiers should strive for, in return for your attention, I promise to do this in just 7. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I offer my special thanks to General Musa for personally inviting me and my colleague, Helen Doyley, to present on the importance and significance of sports recovery and the power of the Invictus movement. I would like to take this opportunity to highlight the legacy that General Musa is establishing here in Nigeria as a result of his championing the Invictus movement and developing sports recovery on behalf of his troops. We recognize and acknowledge the gravitas of this event, proven by the concentration of so many senior figures, decision makers, and leaders who have traveled so far to be here today. My name is David Wiseman. I served as an infantry officer in the British Army and had the honor of commanding soldiers in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, my career was cut short after I was shot in the chest during a firefight with the Taliban in 2009. I carry the round in my chest today. It's rattling around in there somewhere. Engaging in sport and adventurous challenge was key to my own recovery. Post-injury, I successfully climbed some of the world's highest mountains and swam competitively at an international level. These experiences taught me the power of sport as a catalyst for successful rehabilitation, in rediscovering passion for living after life-changing injuries, in realizing potential to do more, to move into a career after the military, and in creating a new identity that wasn't bound to or defined by wounds, limitations, or the scarring experiences that I'm sure many of us in this room share. Since leaving the army, I have dedicated my life to helping others achieve this success. I now serve on the senior leadership team of the Invictus Games Foundation. So what is this Invictus movement? The Invictus movement started in 2014 with the inaugural Invictus Games in London, started by Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, who continues to lead the movement today. The Invictus Games has been repeated every 2 years in cities around the world, with hundreds of injured personnel gathering from 25 nations to compete across a range of adaptive sports. It's an incredible public spectacle, with world leaders supporting in the stands alongside competitors, friends, and families, plus tens of thousands from the general public, all whilst being broadcast to millions around the world. The Invictus Games are yet to be held in Africa. It is our genuine hope that they will do someday soon. Between and beyond the Games, the Invictus Games Foundation works hard as the world's leading NGO supporting wounded, injured, and sick service personnel and veterans through sport and adventurous challenge. As proven by my presence here today and by the incredible work that's taking place here in Nigeria, we operate at the political level to catalyze systemic change across a growing international movement, focusing on where the need is great, whilst maintaining support for the community we have built over the past decade. The establishment of sports recovery is not just the right thing to do, based on the enhanced recovery and rehabilitation outcomes that result from engaging in sports recovery activity. It is also a clear demonstration that leaders care for their troops. empathy for troops, especially those who become injured, is key to the moral component of fighting power. A soldier who feels that he will be looked after and respected should he become injured is easier to recruit, easier to retain, and will work and will fight harder for his commanders. Over his tenure, and in partnership with the Invictus Games Foundation and delivery partner Africa Unconquered, General Musa has championed the development of sports recovery here in Nigeria. A series of events that captured the world's attention, initially when Nigerian service personnel secured multiple medals at 2 Invictus Games. Secondly, when Harry and Meghan, Duke and Duchess of Sussex, visited Nigeria just last year to spend time with and honour the armed forces community. And most recently, when General Musa and the Right Honourable Mr. Abubakar broke ground on the new Armed Forces Invictus Centre to support the rehabilitation of wounded personnel here in Abuja. General Musa is building a tremendous legacy for his time as CDS and setting conditions for future leaders to build upon it. It has been a personal and professional highlight in my career. This great work has taken place here in Nigeria. But the work is not complete. Concerning the Invictus movement, Nigeria stands alone on the continent of Africa. And I hope that here, this week, we can change that. When we think about the need, I drew inspiration from Professor Gambari's speech earlier. 1,000 insurgent groups here on the continent of Africa. And he set the challenge that this should not be a talking shop. Well, I offer you, ladies and gentlemen, something very practical that we can take away from this week. My colleague and fellow member of the senior leadership team, Helen Doyley, and I invite you, the most powerful military men on the continent of Africa, drawing from the spirit and ethos of this conference. I stand here with an offer of friendship and collaboration, an open invitation for every African nation to join the Invictus movement. We ask for nothing in return, just a simple pledge to commit to supporting men and women in uniform by establishing and developing sports recovery. The call to action is for the distinguished leaders gathered here is to find me or Helen this week and express your nation's interest in joining the Invictus movement. Consider this perhaps the first stage in building upon Nigeria's example, the first step to sending a national team to the Invictus Games and to be celebrated the world over. But deeper than this, it's an opportunity to be a champion of sports recovery, a champion for the welfare of your men and women in uniform, whom it is always an honor for true leaders to serve. Finally, I promise, finally. And this is my second promise. I made you that first one right at the start. This is my second promise. I promise you, reference that bullet that's still in my chest. If you come and talk to me about the Invictus movement anytime this week, I will show you the X-ray and I will let you into the secret whether or not I set off airport security when I go through the gates. Thank you very much.
Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, is instructive. We're talking about empathy for soldiers and men who are wounded, members of the armed forces. And we have a gentleman who spoke about the highlights of the Invictus Games, the power of sports for recovery and empathy for troops. He also dwelt on the power of negotiation, going from 10 minutes to 7 minutes. Any wonder that his surname is Wiseman, His first name is David, but he would have easily become Mr. Wiseman, considering his negotiation skills this day. We thank you so much for letting us into this information, and perhaps I'll be in the beehive, in the lineup for those to find out if the airport security went off with the bullet in your chest. But we thank you for your service, and we thank you for sharing. It's always good to share. And he says General Musa is building a legacy for others to build upon by caring for his troops. Let's give a round of applause to the Chief of Defense Staff. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we slowly wind to the point where the plenary will be done and would let our special guest of honor go on to his other duties, permit me to remind you that lunch would be served at some point soon enough. And so it will be VVIPs, distinguished personalities on the front row, members of the National Assembly, ambassadors, heads of delegations from African countries, chiefs of defense staff from across Africa and service chiefs. They would all be going to the Tajuddin Abbas Hall behind the stage, and they will be warehoused over there to my left. We also have, of course, representatives of governors who are here, and we also have former chiefs of defense staff who are also here, and service chiefs. At this point, I would like to invite a woman very much after my heart, who looks out not only for the environment, but looks out for women and their place in the world, and she looks out for the entire world as she sits on the very powerful seat for the world and for Nigeria as a very special ambassador of this nation. Help me welcome my friend and sister, former Minister of Environment, Nigeria, and current United Nations Deputy Secretary General, #2 civil servant in the world, Her Excellency, Ms. Amina Mohammed. As she makes her way, looking resplendent as always, please continue to clap for her for all the work she does around the world.
Thank you, Eugenia. You do us proud all the time. His Excellency Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented by His Excellency Senator Kashim Shettima, our Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, General Christopher Gwaba Musa, OFR, Chief of Defense Staff, Armed Forces of Nigeria, distinguished African Chiefs of Defense Staff, and I'd like at this moment also to recognize the Minister of State for Defense, and also to recognize Professor Gambari, Professor Bande, Professor Lulumba. You always, you articulate what we're all thinking, but oftentimes we don't have the opportunity or perhaps are in a position to say. So thank you for being here with us. I'd like to also recognize my big brother, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Ibn Chabbas, and I would like to recognize most especially the women experts that are in the panels that will be with you throughout the next 3 days. And just to say that, as we've talked about the women, every one of you is born of a woman, unless you want to challenge that. But secondly, the burden on which women face, whether they lose their husband's ultimate sacrifice in conflict, or that they are the ones that lose their lives, they are the ones that lose their children, they bear the greatest brunt of all the conflicts that we have today in the world. And so for them, I think they deserve their place here today and recognition. Last but not least, in his 7 to 10 minutes, David Wiseman, thank you for talking to us about the day after. Often that is forgotten, that those that manage to go home also have to live a life and heal and be part very much of the societies that they left to serve. And so thank you for reminding us. Excellencies, Excellence, it is an honor to join you for this first ever African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit. And I'd like to thank General Musa and the government of Nigeria for your warm invitation and your welcome to the United Nations. I speak as a proud African woman and as someone who has seen the cost of insecurity in families and communities across our continent. from Boko Haram in Maiduguri to the RSF in Sudan and to the conflict in Ethiopia and more recently in Gaza. These gatherings mark the birth, this one in particular, marks the birth of a new era in African security cooperation at such a critical moment. It is the first of its kind to represent the boots on the ground, a rare opportunity to connect their realities with the policy decisions that shape our continent's security. Nearly 1 in every 5 people on Earth call Africa home. Each one deserves a life in safety and in dignity. And that means protecting civilians, respecting borders, and standing by the principles of international law and the UN Charter. Above all, it calls for a united approach against our common threats. We know that Africa is at the epicenter of global terrorism deaths, and today Professor Gambari has told us just how many of those insurgency groups are on the continent. Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State affiliates coordinate across our continent, and the attacks in West Africa coastal countries surging 250% in 2 years. Violent extremism, thought to be history, is back again in the Lake Chad Basin and in Somalia and beyond. By last year's end, over 14,000 schools were closed in the Central Sahel due to the conflict. Aside from the children who are forcibly recruited, we see young people who are drawn by fear, by money, by a false promise of belonging. And when young people see no path to education or to justice and a future, extremist propaganda finds an audience, and we risk losing an entire generation. In this new era of technology, where it should be advancing as a human endeavor, these groups are using new technologies like unmanned aerial systems and improvised explosive devices to wreak havoc. We cannot afford to be bystanders. Africa must take ownership, must be proactive, and shape how these tools will be used. Cyberspace today is now a battle space. Elections are manipulated, institutions undermined, lies are spread until neighbor turns against neighbor. And we have seen this before. Once it was a radio carrying messages that ignited genocide. Today it is social media amplifying hate at terrifying speed. Artificial intelligence is already transforming the landscape of security. Today, we do have AI tools that are helping countries suffering from conflict and insecurity, identifying food insecurity, predicting displacement caused by climate shocks, even detecting and clearing landmines. Soon, they could help us to spot patterns of unrest before violence erupts. Sadly, the same technology that offers solutions also carries profound risks. AI's expansion into security systems raises fundamental questions about human rights, dignity, and the rule of law, from autonomous border surveillance to predictive policing. It creates fertile ground for misunderstanding, miscalculation, and mistakes. AI-enabled cyber attacks could cripple entire infrastructure and paralyze essential services. Algorithms today are already being used to make life or death decisions. And to turn to another challenge, climate change. It is also reshaping the geography of security across our continent, fueling food scarcity, endangering our people. Extreme heat, sea level rise, shifting rainfall patterns are driving displacement, exacerbating resource competition, and fueling instability. Shrinking water levels in the Lake Chad Basin have displaced over 3 million people. I saw this firsthand when I was Minister of Environment. The evidence is overwhelming, and it is destabilizing our world. The UN Security Council has acknowledged that climate change is a threat multiplier that fuels conflict, displaces populations, and undermines state stability. The International Court of Justice recently recognized climate change as an urgent and existential threat to our world. The IPCC has left no room of doubt. Africa is one of the most exposed regions in the world to climate change. The rippling effect is rising displacement and migration, putting food systems and infrastructure under severe pressure and creating more opportunities for instability and exploitation. The result speaks volumes. Climate change is a clear and present danger to peace. Our seas are also becoming a new front line. Organized crime on our waters is feeding violence on our land. In the Gulf of Guinea, piracy, illicit trade are funding terrorism. In the Red Sea, maritime insecurity is undermining stability far beyond the shoreline. Excellencies, Excellences, each of these threats all share one characteristic: they are transnational. Our response must be that too. When we act in isolation, we hand our adversaries their greatest advantage, our division. Regional cooperation is the linchpin of African security and defense, but we also note that this is easier said than done. Defense collaboration is not simple. We are talking about 54 countries, each with their own policies, their histories, their priorities, and their difficulties. This makes it all the more remarkable that though the complexity and diversity, African forces find ways to act together, and you have. From the African Union's peace support operations to the Algeria African Center for Study and Research on Terrorism, Cape Verde Center for Security and Transnational Organized Crime, and Cameroon's International School for Security Forces, amongst many. The African Union deploys peace support operations where others can and will not. The multinational Joint Task Force in the Lake Chad Basin coordinates regional efforts against Boko Haram. ECOWAS in West Africa and IGAD in the Horn are coordinating troops, logistics, and political engagement. The G5 Sahel and the Accra Initiative have also played key roles. But too often, such initiatives are being held back by mistrust, tensions, gaps, and in some cases, sadly, undermined by the international community. Trust is not built overnight, but without it, every effort to strengthen our partnerships and our response in defense of our people will fall short. Collaboration must be targeted and intentional, and I see 3 opportunities where our unity can tip the balance. First is resources. Pooling our budgets for joint responses makes us stronger than scattering the spending. We proved this when Nigeria helped in the Gambia and Liberia. We must find that spirit again. At the same time, we need to think bigger about financing. National security budgets must be complemented by international support. We can leverage the prevention components of other budgets to reinforce stability and reduce the costs of conflict before they spiral. Cutting off illicit financing is part of this battlefront. YABA's anti-money laundering work and the cooperation through the Multi-Joint Task Force and the Lake Chad Basin Commission are vital to choke off the money flows that sustain conflict from outside of the continent. Second, intelligence and innovation. We need the right tools and mapping in place to plan and to drive strategy at scale. Reinforcing the Accra Initiative, the ECOWAS Standby Force, and giving the Joint Threat Fusion and Analysis Cell the support it needs to ensure data become decisions. The same applies at sea, joint patrols that make the Yaoundé architecture real protection for people and infrastructure. And innovation must be part of our defense, collaborating on AI from drones to cyber tools, and building on African Union's AI strategy can help us to set common standards, technology, people. And third, people and partnerships. Our continent is full of military and academic centers of excellence. We need to harness this strategy and this training capacity, use it more efficiently, and deploy it where it is most needed. And we must unite the public and the private sectors. Soldiers learning side by side with engineers, technicians, innovators, regular fora with business to share cutting-edge knowledge. This is how Africa's own labs and companies can power our security future. In turn, the private sector benefits from access to credit to grow their companies and to feed their bottom line. It creates an enabling environment for young people to strive for their futures. Excellencies, Excellence, history has shown that African military cooperation and collaboration has already proven itself on the world stage. 3 decades ago, Ghana and Nigeria pioneered ECOMOG in Liberia when regional interventions were untested. African military diplomacy stepped up into breach when others hesitated. From those West African origins and beyond, Rwanda transformed from recovery to becoming the #2 global contributor for peacekeeping forces. Today, 9 of the world's top 15 contributors of UN peacekeeping are African nations, African troops, all active in Somalia, in CAR, and the DRC. So we are not only recipients of support from the international community, we are contributors of that support. And without African leadership, there would be no effective peacekeeping. Now, peacekeeping is entering a new era. However, this new era is facing headwinds. Politically, the UN Security Council is deadlocked, and political support is eroding. Meanwhile, external actors are pursuing their own agendas on African soil, complicating and exacerbating our security landscape. Financially, missions are now underfunded. This makes Resolution 2719 of Somalia so vital. With this resolution, and the UN Security Council acknowledged a simple truth: African crises demand African leadership, backed by global financial support for African solutions to succeed. This era, a new era of peacekeeping, also brings with it an opportunity for a new face. That face has to be younger, more diverse in people and skills that will work with communities on the front and the day after. And that includes, Excellencies, women. On the day after, women are the anchors of recovering and helping to rebuild trust, to heal communities long after the guns fall silent. The day after also demands something else from us as military leaders: justice and accountability. They matter the day after. Everyone deserves their day in court. Even accused terrorists, as difficult as this may be able to accept, they must face justice in a court of law. And let us perhaps remind ourselves that terrorists are not born. They are our children. They are the young people who have gone astray, badly astray. And it is our duty to bring them back out from the cold into building their nations and not destroying them. These are some of the issues that international community will raise, and as leaders, you will have to be in a position that you can defend. Excellencies, let us be reminded why we need peace for development. Without it, neither the Sustainable Development Goals nor Agenda 2063 can be achieved. Farmers cannot farm without security. Energy systems cannot be built without being protected. Every school, every hospital depends on security. And we cannot have our children, our girls, in fear of kidnapping. Without security, development is impossible. Without development, security cannot hold, and lasting peace must be built upon both. Both are the foundation of our agendas 2030 and Africa's vision for Agenda 2063. They connect the dots between prosperity, good governance, and peace. Food security, education, health, decent work, social protection, green technology, and resilience, justice and institutions, and people must be able to trust in. We know that every additional year of schooling reduces the likelihood of a young person joining armed groups by up to 13%. This evidence begs the question: how do we invest in peace? Is it just military spending? Is it development spending? Is it both? That is a discussion that we will need to have in this room and beyond. And it means tackling root causes. It means democracy that is robust and representative, not on constitutional changes dressed up as solutions. While this might seem legitimate in many eyes, in the longer term, democracy and by extension security will be weakened. Instead, strong institutions underpinned by strong democracies and strong security apparatus are the safeguard against instability. Let's give some deep thought to the resources that we are allocating to achieve stability. Last year, the world spent $2.7 trillion on the military, more than at any point in the history of the world. Yet insecurity has not diminished. In fact, conflicts are spreading, not shrinking. At the same time, the world fell short by $4 trillion each year for just basic development needs. $4 trillion missing for school, for jobs, for clinics. That imbalance raises a clear question: what kind of spending truly delivers the peace you are willing to fight to protect? This is at the heart of the African Union's call to silence the guns, because silencing the guns is not just about weapons laid down. It is about investing in people, tackling root causes, and creating societies where stability is built on justice, opportunity, and trust. Success will only be possible if we create the fiscal space for investing in people and stability. And so we do need in Africa a fairer chance and a fairer finance, debt relief, affordable credit, and a global system that works for Africa is what we need today. We need a global financial architecture that reflects today's realities. And we need African countries strong, but more importantly, united in calling for these changes. Our chiefs, excellencies, friends, strategic defense collaboration is not a slogan. It is the bridge between the threats that we face today and the peace that we promise tomorrow. I've seen the challenge, I know you have. I've also seen what's possible when we find common ground. The outcome of this week must be heard beyond this room. It must be carried into every international forum where decisions on defense are being made on our behalf. That's how we will shape Africa's security on Africa's terms. But reshaping security also means changing mindsets. We must see women not only as victims of war, but as partners in peace. And just as women are the bedrock of peace in our homes, they must be a part of the search for peace on the war front. This is not about winning wars, it is about winning peace, and is about doing it together. As Nelson Mandela Madiba once said, "I dream of the realization of the unity of Africa, whereby its leaders combine in their efforts to solve the problems of this continent." That dream calls on us to act with resolve, with courage, with trust, and a shared purpose to safeguard the future of Africa, the future of Africans that we want. I thank you.
As always, Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, United Nations Deputy Secretary General, is received in greeting by Mr. Vice President representing Mr. President, and she exchanges pleasantries with everybody across board, a well-beloved daughter of Nigeria. Thank you, sir. You may be seated. Thank you very much. Her Excellency Amina Mohammed is a well-loved Nigerian, a well-loved African, and she has made that intervention so powerful as she always does across the world. Let's look at algorithms, cybercrime, climate change, the role of women. Women's role is not about being victims of war, but being partners in peace. We thank you so very much for your intervention. Another round of applause for Africa's and the world's leading number 2 civil servant, United Nations Deputy Amina Mohammed. I'd like to crave your indulgence that all your speeches should be brought to the corner of the Director of Ceremonies here. All the speeches that have been presented for the purpose of the Secretariat, Squadron Leader Mohammed and Mr. Derinde will be collecting at this corner. So if you would please send your aides to help those documents. For the photographs, let me announce that the front row will be the first to take the photographs when it's time for photography. All African Chiefs of Defense would be taking the photograph in batch 2. Let us also remember to deliver those speeches to us at this corner. Your Excellency, special guest of honor, sir, we have quite a number of persons here who speak different languages. I'll just make a beehive to greet our Ghanaian delegates, Akwaba. They are our neighbors. We welcome you. As always, we say Mjambo to our Kenyan and East African delegates. Assalamu alaikum to our North African delegates. Obrigado to those who are coming from Mozambique, Angola. Bonjour et bienvenue to our French-speaking delegates. We thank you so very much, all of you, for being here. And I'd like to say, Your Excellency, since Her Excellency Amina Mohammed has spoken about women, we know that those who serve on the front lines, who lead our security, cannot do so if they do not have peace of mind, and their wives provide that. I'd like to greet and welcome the President of the Defense and Police Officers' Wives Association, wife of the CDS, Mrs. Ogogo Musa, who is here in all her glory, in lemon and white, with all her team members, the wife of the Chief of Army Staff, President, wife of the Chief of the Air Staff, President Nafowa, wife of the Navy Officers' Wives Association, who is here with us, and wife of the Police Inspector General. So she's president of POWA, Police Officers' Wives Association. Can you wave from where you are so we can see that we're all in good hands, men, well looked after and provided support from the women who stay with us, who look after the home front while all this work is going on. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we know that it is a difficult exercise to worry about the security of Africa. As the French would say, le défi sécuritaire de l'Afrique est complexe, mais ce sommet d'aujourd'hui travaille à la solution. We believe that the summit today will provide most of the solutions that we are seeking for. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is now an honor to remind you that as soon as the next speech at the very high point is made, there would be souvenirs given to our very special guest of honor by the CDS, would crave the indulgence of His Excellency, Mr. President's representative, to stay after his speech to receive these souvenirs. It is now my singular honor and pleasure to invite to the podium our special guest of honor, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, represented today by Nigeria's unflappable number 2 citizen, His Excellency the very distinguished Senator Kashim Shettima, to deliver his special guest of honor speech. Thank you, sir.
Kindly sit down, please. The President of the Senate, distinguished Senator Godswill Obot Akpabio, ably represented by Senate President Emeritus and Chairman Senate Committee on Defense, Senator Ahmed Ibrahim Lawan, GCON. Senator Adams Aliu Oshomole, Chairman Senate Committee on Interior. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, ably represented by the Vice Chairman, House Committee on Defense, Right Honorable Ahmed Abdullahi Kalambaina, and all the members of the National Assembly present here. The Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, my own Ms. Amina Mohammed. The former Prime Minister of the Republic of Guinea, His Excellency Lansana Kouyaté, the former President of ECOWAS Commission, His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Ibn Chambers, the President of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Umar Aliu Toure, ably represented by the ECOWAS Commissioner, Political Affairs, Peace and Security Ambassador Abdul Fattah Musa, the Honorable Minister of State for Defense, Dr. Muhammad Bello Matoli Maradun, the former Minister of External Affairs, former permanent representative of Nigeria to the United Nations, elder statesman, Professor Ibrahim Agbola Gambari, CFR. The convener and chief host, the Nigerian Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Gwabin Musa, OFR, and other service chiefs and defense chiefs from African countries. All service chiefs of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, former chiefs of defense staff, and service chiefs present here. I'm quite delighted and appreciative of their showing solidarity with General Gwabin Musa. I want to mention Air Chief Marshal Mohammed Al-Amin Dagash, General A.O. Ogbomudia, General Martin Luther Agwai, Admiral O.S. Ibrahim, Air Chief Marshal O.O. Peterin, General A.G. Olonishakin, General, my own, this is my own very personal friend, General Loki Elionye Oye Nuchua Irabo, and former service chiefs, Lieutenant General O.A. Ihejerika, Lieutenant General Farouk Yahya, Vice Admiral A.Z. Gambo, and Air Marshal I.O. Amao. We truly appreciate your presence here. Heads of military establishments and senior military officers, both serving and retired, heads of security and paramilitary agencies present here, members of the diplomatic corps, members of the academia, especially a Pan-Africanist and activist, Professor Patrick Lodge Otiono Lumumba. International organizations represented here, captains of industry, equally represented by the MD, by the Group Chief Operating Officer of NNPC, heads of federal government agencies and parastatals, distinguished delegates, members of the fourth estate of the Rim, honored guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I want to first of all appreciate our own irrepressible Eugenia Abu. She is a 19. When she graduated from ABU Zaria with a degree in English in 1981, I was a secondary school pupil. She's a creative writer. She has MSc, MA in Comparative Policy Studies from City University of London, and another MA in creative writing from another university in the UK. He wrote 2 books. One, an essay and a poetry, a book of poems. So Eugenia Abu, we are ever grateful. For 17 years, she was the anchor at NTA, NTA's prime time news by 9 p.m. She retired, but not tired. She retired as an executive director of programs at NTA. So we have to eulogize you. We have to celebrate you. We have to honor you, and we have to respect you. The reality of our geography has made us more than kith and kin. We are bound as a family, sharing not just borders, but destiny. And in this family, defense is the first expression of love each member can promise the other. This gathering is therefore not just a convergence of uniforms and titles. It is a summoning of Africa's guardians to the village square of ideas. There has never been a time when our collective defense invited us so urgently to sit together and reason together. This summit, the first of its kind, could not have come at a better time. I am therefore deeply honored to welcome each of you to Abuja, the heart of Nigeria and the home of Africa's endless possibilities. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the enormity of threats across our continent compels us to pause and reflect. From the deserts where insurgency festers, to the high seas where piracy prowls, from the silent corridors of cybercrime to the ruthless networks of transnational criminals, none of these tragedies respect borders, and neither should our response. What is true of our challenges must also be true of our resolve. We cannot neutralize these threats in isolation. This is the moment to reassess our military objectives in the collective aspirations to make Africa safe. It is time to forge a new doctrine of continental defense, one rooted in trust, shared intelligence, and coordinated strategy. Nigeria's promise has always been simple and firm: to be a good neighbor and a brother's keeper in the struggle for peace. Our armed forces have stood shoulder to shoulder with our neighbors and far beyond in peacekeeping missions, counter-terrorism operations, and humanitarian endeavors. We hold no illusion. Security is the foundation upon which the edifice of progress must stand. That is why we must use this summit not merely as a meeting, but as a covenant to deepen cooperation through joint training, harmonized doctrines, and interoperable systems. For this to endure, We must build a framework where our defense institutions speak with one voice and act with one purpose. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the nature of warfare has evolved. The threats of today are asymmetric, digital, and often invisible. Our response must not be less dynamic. We must invest in cyber defense, artificial intelligence, and indigenous military innovation. Africa cannot remain merely a consumer of technology. We must be creators, innovators, and owners of the tools that secure our tomorrow. I therefore urge this summit to explore avenues for defense industrial cooperation, collaboration, research partnerships, and African-led solutions to African security challenges. In this journey, I call upon the organized private sector to be our ally, to invest in the future of defense as an investment in the survival of nations. Our struggles for peace have not come without heroes and heroines. Across battlefields known and unknown, valiant men and women of our armed forces have laid down their lives in defense of their nations. Their sacrifice is the eternal price of peace, and the least we can do is honor them by ensuring their legacy is enshrined in the institutions we build, the values we uphold, and the partnerships we forge. So this summit must not dissolve with the applause of its closing session. I propose the establishment of a permanent African Chiefs of Defense Staff Forum, a platform for continuous dialogue, strategic foresight, and operational coordination. Let us institutionalize this spirit of unity and make it a cornerstone of Africa's security architecture. The future of Africa depends on the choices we make today. Let us rise above division and embrace cooperation. Let us imagine and build an Africa where peace is not the exception but the norm, where the language of war gives way to the grammar of progress, and where the dignity of our people is shielded by our collective resolve. Finally, I reserve for special recognition and in deference to my sister, Ms. Amina J. Mohammed, I wish to recognize and appreciate Field Marshal Ogogo Lillian Musa. You know, the wives of our service chiefs, our army officers are a step above their husbands. Then General Gwabin Musa is a general, so I will address her as Field Marshal Ogogo Lillian Musa. We appreciate you. We thank you most sincerely with your team for holding the home port. You are the fulcrum on which our society rests. We are mightily proud of you, and we appreciate your efforts. On behalf of the government and people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I welcome you once again to Abuja. May your deliberations be fruitful, your partnerships enduring, and your vision clear and focused. On this note, it is my singular honor and privilege, on behalf of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, to declare open the African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit, Abuja 2025. Thank you, and may God bless us all.
Very much. I'd like to crave the indulgence of His Excellency to please remain on the podium for the souvenirs that the Chief of Defense Staff will be presenting to him. At this point, I'd like us to give a resounding African Chiefs of Defense Staff clap to His Excellency, our special guest of honor, who has delivered such a heartwarming special guest of honor speech on behalf of Mr. President. The Chief of Defense Staff will make his way up. The souvenirs are expected to be on their way to him now, and they are bringing them up. Chief of Defense Staff, sir, if you will step up, we'll bring the souvenirs to you. Thank you, sir. We have them here. These are very special souvenirs that are being given to our special guest of honor, in remembrance of this summit 2025, which is the Maiden Summit. And after the souvenirs have been given, would please request the front row to please step forward for the photographs at this point. So the souvenirs are making their way up to the Chief of Defense Staff, who is our host. And this is a homegrown Nigerian artifact that has been presented. A photo moment. Congratulations to the Chief of Defense Staff, and we thank special guest of honor for all that he does. At this point, I'd like to also have the next souvenir. Are we presenting the next souvenir then? Yes, absolutely. So the next souvenir is making its way, a very special piece that will sit on the table of a special guest of honor, an insignia of the Chief of Defense Staff. Thank you very much, sir, for your patience. At this point, I'd like to call for the photographs. We have another one for Haji Amina Mohammed. Haji Amina Mohammed, you'll have to step up, please, quickly, so that we'll bring that to a close. Thank you very much indeed. His Excellency has our very special daughter at this point, who represents not just Africa, but all of the world as the United Nations Deputy Secretary General, Her Excellency Haji Amina Mohammed. At this point, I'd like that the three of you should please step forward for the photograph. If you'll step down, 1, 2, and then the front row can now join. Can the front row please galvanize for this photograph, after which I'll invite the African Chiefs of Defense. This is the photo that should make the front page tomorrow. So all those in the front row, please make your way and join this photograph. There will be a couple of people who might want to stand in the back. So this is the photograph. The African Chiefs of Defense will be in the next photography. There will be people who will be standing in the back of the photograph. To make it complete, will our photographers please help us with this arrangement so people can be seen at they have to go to the top and then stand in the back. Correct. More people can join in the back now to make this photograph make sense. Could you join in the back? Right. Thank you very much, sir, for your patience. He's making his way. Thank you very much. Our African Chiefs of Defense should please step forward for this photograph. Please, can some of you step to the back? One more. We have one more photograph. Principal staff officers, Defense Headquarters, paramilitary services, and we also have the service chiefs in this photograph. Quickly.
All right, that was the opening ceremony of the African Chief of Defense Staff Summit 2025, held at the Air Force Center in Abuja.
Thank you very much. The president of DEPOA and wives of service chiefs and their members will now join in this photograph. I'd like to call on delegates to please leave their translation headphones on their seats. Yes, so Field Marshal Ogoro. Okay, all the ladies should now please join in this photograph. Thank you. And then take the rear end in the back so that we're done. Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, representative of the President, we thank you for your patience, sir. The ladies are making their way in the back.
All right, that was the opening ceremony of the African Chief of Defense Staff Summit 2025 held at the Bola Ahmed Tinubu International Conference Center in Abuja. The summit continues with high-level discussions aimed at strengthening continental defense cooperation and tackling emerging security threats. Newsday returns in a moment.